Belen doesn't have access to the video. I have no idea what that means.
I can do just the audio. I can explain the audio and we can speak without the audio. And next time we will see how to do it.
Okay. Well, yeah, I'm sorry, everybody, but if you've got some questions about moving to Spain, we've got Belen here, one of our property lawyers. You can see her, you can hear her, but you can't see her.
You will not be able to see me, but it's enough just with hearing us.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah. Okay. Right. There we go. So basically, yeah, if you've got some questions, we can answer them. Belen is the head of property, and there we go. I think have you got the list of questions, Belen? Because we had some questions sent in before, didn't we?
Yes, but anyway, what I wanted to do first is, as we spoke, is to mention some mistakes that people commit when buying properties in Spain.
Yeah.
And then we can have the questions, and we also have Hannah.
Hi.
Yeah, we also have Anna. You can't see Anna, but Belen's the head of property and Anna's the head of immigration, but it's just coming up as Belen because Anna's actually sat next to Belen. There you go.
Both of us here.
Yeah.
I don't know if you prefer to start with immigration or property.
Well, I mean, like I say, I mean, what are some of the common mistakes that people make when they buy a property in Spain? I mean, that's the key thing. I suppose a lot of our viewers are going to be asking about buying a property in Spain.
Yeah, exactly. So in order to point out the points that people, well, when people come to us, they normally share the same kind of mistakes committed when buying properties in Spain. So let's just give a few of them. So in case you are thinking of buying a property in Spain in the future, you are aware of all these. So it is important, and John, you can stop me anytime. It is important to have clear that many people, especially Spanish people, I have to say, used to think that buying a property is only, I see the property, I find the property that I want to buy, I offer a price, the seller accepts, okay, everything's fine. We can go to the notary, we can complete the purchase.
Yeah.
But of course, John, you know, Anna, you know that that's not the case. Mm-hmm. Never. So, well, the thing is that most of the problems arises not in the signature of the notary for completion, because when you go to completion, you almost have everything ready. Not almost, you have everything ready. The problems do not arise when you go to completion. The problems are found much before than that. So, for example, we find many clients telling us, I want to Just Law Solicitors to assist us with our property purchase. Okay, we already have a property. Yes, and we also have an accepted offer, and we have already signed a reservation document. Well, that's the first and the most common problem that we find at property. Many people, they just find the property, the seller agrees the price, and during the early stages, they sign a reservation document, they pay a deposit, and what happens after that? So when the client comes to us with the reservation contract already signed, then what happens if the property doesn't have a first occupation license? How do we compel the seller to obtain it if the client, the buyer, hasn't compelled him since the beginning? So I always say, everything that you have not agreed since the beginning cannot be agreed later, unless, of course, the seller agrees. If the seller agrees, that's perfectly fine. But what happens if the seller doesn't agree? So, for example, another common thing, a client comes to us with a reservation contract signed, and when we go to the second step, because normally we first sign a reservation contract and then a purchase contract. So when we go when we prepare the draft purchase contract for the 10%, what happens with the 10%? If you have not stated specifically in the reservation contract that the 10% would be deposited in the agent or the lawyer's account until completion, you cannot compel the seller to do that. This is why in the reservation contract, you should state all the conditions that you want for the purchase, because otherwise you cannot compel the seller to accept your conditions later.
Right. Yeah. So I think, it's not an absolute legal requirement to instruct a lawyer. I'll try and be as neutral as possible, but it's highly recommended that you instruct a lawyer. I mean, it's the same in England. It's not a legal requirement that you instruct a lawyer for a property purchase in England, but everybody does. I mean, I'm a lawyer, and when I sold my mother's house, I instructed a lawyer as well. So it's worth it to have a lawyer to look at the to act in your interests. What sort of money should people be paying when they assume they've made the offer of the property that they want, and then they think, no, I'm going to take legal advice. The first thing is the reservation contract, isn't it?
Yes. The law doesn't state a mandatory amount. So the law doesn't say you have to put a deposit of 3,000, 5,000, 10,000. The law doesn't say anything. So, for example, just today, a client has come to us saying, the agent is asking me to pay 10K before putting an offer. Well, that's a very big red flag. If they're asking you to pay 10,000 euros in order to put a reservation on a property, to put an offer, then that's a red flag. It is true that the law doesn't say anything. So in the end, it is just a matter of what the seller and the buyer agree. If the buyer and the seller agree on paying 3,000, 5,000, everything is acceptable. Then the law doesn't say anything about the purchase contract either, but normally it is a 10%.
Right. So if I'm buying I used to say 100,000, but say we're on the coast, on the Costa del Sol, we use a 200,000 example. So if I'm looking at a property for 200,000, I've agreed the purchase price with the estate agent, and I've walked away and I said, no, I'm going to take independent legal advice. So what would be I know there's no absolute certainty, but what is the normal amount of a reservation? What would you put down? Normally
8,000, 10,000 more or less.
Right.
And the difference with the 10%, you would put it in the purchase contract.
Yeah. So you put 8 to 10,000 down. So who would you pay that 8 to 10,000 to? Say it's 10,000 for argument's sake, which is 5% of 200,000. Who would you pay that to?
This is what I was saying before. So our advice is always to put the reservation deposit and the 10% in the seller's lawyer account or the agent's account, or even if in our account if the seller accepts it. The law doesn't say anything, but of course the ideal thing. Just 1 week ago, we had a case in the office. 2 clients of us, they put a deposit, the 10%. And the seller insisted a lot on getting the 10% in his account. As always, I recommended our clients not to do it. It happened that the seller passed away. So what would have happened if our clients put the deposit in the seller account directly? In that case, the account is frozen. The account is closed until the moment that the inheritance is done. It wouldn't be possible for anyone to take any money from that account. So this is just one of the several risks that you can find if you put the deposit in the seller's account. Of course, for example, what happens if when we require the documents to make the due diligence, what happens if one of the documents is not good? So what happens if the property has an infraction? So that I always say 99% of the issues of a property can be known since the initial due diligence. And many agents, and that's the second mistake we're going to talk about, but many agents, they tell you, but what initial due diligence? You can do the due diligence after you have signed the reservation contract. Well, not exactly, because some things are not possible to be fixed. It is true that 99% of the problems of a property can be fixed as long as the seller has a lawyer and the seller is willing to fix it. But what happens if you put the deposit in the seller's account and after that you find out that something is not correct?
Yeah, absolutely. And so basically, it's a case of taking legal advice, because what you've got to think is the absolute worst thing that can happen is the sale falls through. I mean, don't get me wrong, it doesn't. Usually it doesn't. But the worst case scenario, and you don't want to have court cases to get your money back. You want to make sure that you can get the money back as easily as possible if it all falls through, which in most cases it doesn't. So, there's no problem.
Exactly. Yeah. So it is true that in most of the purchases, well, I don't want to say again 99, but it is true that in most of the cases that we assist, any problem that we find in the property can be fixed as long as both parties are willing to, well, the buyer, if the buyer has to wait, or the seller to cooperate. But almost all problems in a property can be fixed unless the seller is not the owner. So, for example, a few weeks ago, we also found an agent she didn't want to provide the nota simple, the land registry extract, before our client signed the reservation contract. And I said, well, you have to imagine, if it was you, the person buying, would you buy the property if you don't even know if the person that is signing as the owner, because I can sign that I'm the owner of whatever, but then I'm not. So would you buy a property? Would you sign a reservation document? And would you put a deposit? Would you pay an amount if you do not see that this person is the actual owner? And she said, no. Well, then why do you want our client to do it? So it is important to the initial due diligence is crucial, because in the initial due diligence, we will know if the property is rustic, if it is urban, if it has charges, if the seller is the only owner, or if maybe also happens a person is the owner, but another person has the use of the property, which is called in Spanish usufructo. So all of these things we have to know before the client pays a deposit, or, well, if the client has already paid a deposit, of course, we can also continue from there.
Right. Okay. And a lot of people think it's just the reservation contract, but there's another contract after the reservation contract, isn't there?
Yes. So normally, because again, the law is very old and doesn't say anything about all this. So the law, it doesn't state that's mandatory, but normally you will sign first a reservation contract, and we will go to that point with the second mistake. So the reservation contract to take the property off the market, and then more or less around 2, 3, 4 weeks after that, you will sign the arras contract, the private purchase contract, in which you normally pay at 10% minus the reservation already paid.
Right.
So the second mistake is we also find many agencies or sellers telling clients, well, just sign the reservation contract, because this is not a purchase contract. This is a contract to take the property off the market. Well, it's true, because the reservation contract is signed to block the property and have it reserved into your name. But as I said before, what happens if you don't state something as mandatory for that specific purchase? Because the law doesn't say that the seller is obliged to provide anything. The law only says that the seller has to provide the energy certificate. That's the only thing that's mandatory by law. So what happens if you sign the reservation contract just to take the property off the market, and after that you realize that you need to compel the seller to do whatever due diligence, depending, of course, on the property.
Yeah. I mean, that's it. I mean, and then just before we ask some questions of Anna, and again, trying to be as neutral as possible, because obviously we are selling legal advice in Spain, but some people say, oh, you go to the notary and the notary does everything you need, but that's not quite right, is it?
Exactly. Well, that was in fact the sixth mistake. So yeah, people used to think that if you go to the notary, you will have everything reviewed. Same with mortgages. People sometimes think that if you instruct a bank to do the evaluation, that you will see all of the problems. But that's not the case. The notary will not do any due diligence on the property. The notary will just check that by the date of completion, the person that is selling you the property is the owner. Okay, that's fine. But what happens if the property is rustic? The notary will not check if the property is placed in a protected area. The notary will not check if the property has an urban infraction. The notary will not check if the property has debt with the community of owners or with the electricity company. So the notary will just issue the deed, which is, of course, an important step, because the deed is what is registered in the land registry, so the ownership can be fully registered into the buyer's name. But that's it. The notary will not do any due diligence on the property.
Yeah, absolutely. And so it's important to take independent legal advice. And if you don't believe us, I know if you look on the Move to Spain podcast on Spotify and Apple, and you look at episode 5, myself and Sean have an interview with a Spanish notary. And the Spanish notary says that. The Spanish notary says, get yourself an independent lawyer. I don't check everything. So you can look at episode 5 of the Move to Spain podcast and have a listen to that. So, Anna, one of the questions that we've got, Anna, that people ask about is if they're coming on a visa, say, for example, the non-lucrative visa, and you think, okay, I'm going to retire to Spain, or you could be coming on the digital nomad visa, you come in to work in Spain from home or something. Do you have to actually own the property? Do you have to actually have bought the property before you can come on your visa? How does it work?
Well, since the golden visa already not exist, this is not obligatory requirement for you to own the property when you move to Spain. See, I always recommend my clients, because let's say we work with the consulates, we work with administration, and no one can guarantee you that the visa will be 100%. We will do our best to submit your documents and everything, but who decides is administration. Which means that what I recommend is first you secure your place, rental agreement or Airbnb, for example, with a digital nomad, and then when you move to Spain, then you're already buying a property because you already secured here. This why? Because what I'm afraid, not afraid, let's say, what I don't want to put you in a situation when you sold absolutely everything and you do not have place where you can return after. So you can be in a legal situation after in Spain. So in order to secure you move, we secured your residency, and then you buy property in Spain. Of course, if you would like to, you can buy property in Spain, move to Spain, you're already established in Spain, and then you can sell your property in another country or in your home country. This is good. This I can recommend, yes, because you can buy a property without being a resident. This is not obligatory requirement to buy a property.
Just to be sure, the golden visa is gone. It doesn't make a difference if you own a property or not. But what you can do is you can apply for the visa, then buy a property, or you can buy the property and then you can apply for the visa. I mean, we can't give a 100% guarantee you're going to get the visa, but I think Anna's got a 100% success rate so far.
I always think about the client. First of all is the client and your security in all the fields. So in this case, buy a property, yes. Why is good to have a property already or your place in Spain where you move? Because, for example, for the non-lucrative, if we provide, for example, the deeds, the immigration usually seen as a plus. You have financial means, you have your property, you have your place. Then, when we go to the second part of the process, which is the town hall registration and the fingerprinting, it is obligatory to have a place, permanent place in Spain. If you do not have property, your own property, we need a rental agreement generally about something like 6 months in a permanent contract, which means in the market of Spain, renting right now could be a headache, and we have short limited time. Until you register at the town hall, we cannot proceed with the fingerprinting, and you do not have a residency card, which in majority of the cases means that you can't travel and you can't return to your country. So if you have your property, we directly registered you there, you go for the fingerprinting, and it's secured. Let's say second part will be much easier for you in this case.
So Steve's asked a question. Steve asked a question. No, it makes no difference if you own a property or not, of whether or not you can get the visa. It's the same process, Steve, whether you own the property or not. Yeah, it used to be if you had a property over a certain value, as a non-EU passport holder, there was this thing called the golden visa, but that's gone now. I think it went last year. I think it was October last year. I think it went. Can't remember when, but it's gone now.
March last year. Yes.
Yeah, so that's gone now. Yeah, so that's not a thing. And like I say, if you're thinking about retiring to Spain, then it's the non-lucrative visa, and there's no age limit. You just can't work. You can only have passive income. People think they can go back and work somewhere else. You can't. You can only have what's called passive income.
The main question, let's say main mistake, what my clients could, not clients, I mean people think that when you would like to move to Spain with a non-lucrative, someone asked me, can I continue working in my country while I'm in Spain as a non-lucrative? I will not work in Spain. Unfortunately, it's not. The non-lucrative, since more strictly since the new immigration law, means that if you go to Spain as a non-lucrative, you cannot work anywhere. You can't work online, you can't work in Spain, you can't work in your country. And how they will check it? How they will check it? When you go to the consulate, one of the main documents that the consulate will ask you is, please prove to me that you are not working. For example, in the UK, it's the P45. Let's say in US, the letter from your employer stating that you will not work and you're not working anymore. There is a certain date when you will stop to work. Without this, even if you complete with the requirements, the consulate may reject it. And it's not only for the main applicant, it's also for the family members.
Yeah.
So
yeah. So the other question that people ask is like, basically, I want to retire to Spain. How much money do I need?
let's see, the iPrem is maintained this year, so let's say I always recommend to see the maximum amount, which is 34,000 euros plus family members, which is 8,400 in this case for each family member. If we go to this amount, let's say the maximum, let's say, in this case we are secured, let's say, in this field. We show that you have enough amount, and let's say the consulate very likely will approve you. Some of the consulates also have their own requirements in this. Let's say genuine requirement, you have to complete with financial means, or income, or savings. It has to be savings. We can't use in majority of the consulate the investments. Is another, that's a question. So in this case, if you have passive income, rental, pension, for example, and savings, even, for example, the passive income do not complete the requirements, but you have it, and you have enough savings, then it will be more likely that the consulate will approve you. If you only show that you have, I have savings, they complete for 1 year, it's perfect, okay, but you don't have any other passive income, you do not have any other source of passive income after, or possibility of investments to pass to your savings, then let's say it could be difficult to get the approval of the consulate, because the consulate, not all of them of course, but some of them see, okay, you have for 1 year, but let's think about the renewal. If you compromise that you will not work in Spain, then what you will do when you go to renew? Because for the renew, you have to show that you can maintain yourself and your family members for 2 following years, and you have there, let's say, there could be a questions. They will not reject you, of course, directly, but they can ask you more additional questions during the process. And it's very likely in this case.
So you can, it's, for one person, it's 34,000 euros. If you've got a family member, it's another 8,000 euros. And you can rely on passive income and savings, or one or the other.
Yes.
And the other thing is, we're not in the business of selling health insurance, but Ariette's in the Move to Spain Facebook group. You can talk to her, but make sure that you've got, for the non-lucrative visa, you're going to need health insurance. Even if you're an EU citizen coming, you can still need health insurance. But make sure that your health insurance policy is suitable for your visa.
It is very important. Let's say, when we're speaking about the visa, we have the main requirements, and all of these main requirements have to be completed. So financial means, perfect. We submit bank statements, proof of passive income, everything translated, everything good. Then it is good. We have to see the health insurance, because medical certificate, for example, you will obtain. I mean, it's generally just a certificate from your family doctor, signed and stamped. Already have, everybody will have it. So health insurance, no co-payment, full coverage. Let's say there's strict.
You have to, your health insurance has to be for everything. There can't be any excess payments or co-payments.
Exactly. In this case, you have to be very, very careful, because even if you complete, you don't have criminal records, everything good, you have enough financial means, but your health insurance doesn't complete the requirements, let's say the council could reject you. That's it.
Yeah. Another thing that Anna just skipped over a little bit there is you do need a clean criminal record. There's various things you could have done in the past, whether or not that's going to be taken account of or not. It's best to talk to Anna if you've got something.
Very good to have it absolutely clean. Yes, I mean, it's the ideal situation. But if you have something, let's see, we have to analyze it, because not all criminal records will be, let's say, the red flag in this case. And I prefer always to, I mean, I'm honest. Show me what you have, and we will try to help you in this case. Let's see what we have, analyze it, and see how we can help you. Maybe there's the minor charge, for example, and we can support it with the recommendations and your personal letter, and see what we can do. But of course, there was a heavy crime, and let's say it was a prison and something that is more difficult in this case.
So bear that in mind. I mean, there's other visas available. There's a digital nomad visa. If you're coming on the digital nomad visa, if you're self-employed or you're having an online business in Spain, there is a possibility that you can go into the Spanish Social Security. So you could be covered, get your health insurance that way, because you're under the Spanish Social Security system. And again, just for completeness, if you come on the non-lucrative visa, you have to have health insurance for the first year, unless you're a British pensioner and you could get the S1, then you don't have to worry. But in year 2, if you want, you can pay, I think it's €60 a month and 120 if you're over 65, and you can actually pay and join the Spanish health system. So there's things about that. So the other thing, Belen, I wanted to bring you back in, Belen. In episode 5 of the Move to Spain podcast, which is always my go-to explanation because it's got a Spanish notary explaining things. One of the things you have to be careful about is paying for the property. And as I understand it, the best way to do it is to have the currency broker transfer the money into the lawyer's client account, and then the lawyer, hopefully you or us or whatever, takes the banker's draft to the notary. Is that something?
Exactly, yeah. So we have 2 ways of paying accepted payments for completion of a purchase. First one is the bank check. You just go to the bank and they issue a piece of paper that can be worth €1,000. The second one is to make a transfer. It is called in Spanish OMF, which is a transfer officially made through the Bank of Spain. That's the second possibility. I think the notary didn't mention that in episode 5, but well, that's the other way of doing it.
Yeah, I think the notary, to be fair to him, he did give a little caveat at the start. He said, people don't believe that checks are the best thing. And he was saying, look, I prefer it when they come with a check, they send the money to the lawyer's client account. The lawyer gets a banker's draft, a bank check, takes it to the notary. The notary then, if everything's all right, then the check's handed over. If you sent the money in advance and things go wrong, then you've got to get the money back off the other person. So that notary, who is a very experienced notary, very learned, absolutely top notch, he says use the banker's draft method, because we always assume the worst. If it all goes wrong, it's easier to get the money back because you haven't given it, basically.
Exactly. Well, we have an important new on that this year, and it is now in Spain, you can make instant transfers. So if you send money to anyone, now it seems we are in the 21st century, and now if you send money to someone, the other person will receive it in that same moment. So that's quite good because, we cover the whole of Spain. So sometimes if a client is buying in Galicia, Galicia is far from Malaga. So, for example, if the client sends us the funds and we pay the seller, we are also able to make a transfer and the seller will receive it in that same moment. So once the seller has signed the paperwork and we have completed the purchase, we make the payment. It's quite easy, but it is true that bank check is something, it is like 15th century, but in Spain it's quite used. Yeah.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, yeah, of course, yeah, as Belen points out, you could be at the notary, you could be on the phone to your currency broker. Make sure it's a currency broker that you can work with. We have Inara from Lumen Pay on the Move to Spain podcast. She's got all the licenses. There you go. And what she said was she's available all the time, so you could literally phone her up and say, right, we're ready to do the deal. Can you push the button? That would be an alternative to a banker's draft. So Ian McKenzie, very, very difficult, even with a solicitor, and non-lucrative visas, very difficult. Well, it isn't. I mean, it isn't for us. We've been advising clients since 1992. We've got 100% success rate with visas. Property purchases. If you take advice from us before you sign or pay anything, then there isn't an issue. But I wouldn't agree with that. The process is easy if you have a lawyer, I'd say. But yeah.
The question is correctly prepare all your documents and know when your consulate, because let's see, the list is public. You know all the documents, but you also have to know how to deal with the consulate, what they may ask. In our practice, let's say, I always say, okay, this is the official list of the documents, but all time is changing. Maybe they need something else. Maybe they need it in another way. Each consulate, even in the same country. For example, it can be different between Washington, D.C. and Miami. It can be different between Edinburgh and London. Everything is different. You have to know the trickies of each one.
That's the thing. So the law, same as it happens with properties, the law in Spain is it's not a very exhaustive. So the law will just say the very general documents that you have to provide, the basic ones, but after that, it is your lawyer's job to know the consulate that you're dealing with. So, for example, I hear Anna saying, okay, now we have this client has to go to whatever consulate. Well, in this consulate, you know that since 2 weeks ago, they are requesting this. So it is not important just to provide documents that the law says, but also the documents that specific consulate normally requests, because the consulate will look to your case individually. And in the end, it is a person saying yes or no, or you have to provide this. And if they say so, then you have to provide it. So it is important that your lawyer has information about the consulate, whatever consulate you have to go.
Yeah. There's just a question from GT Billion. How much do you have to invest in the property? That's all gone now. Owning the property doesn't help you anymore. The golden visa is long gone. And Ian makes a point. I'm not sure. 3-month period. All documents have to be completed within a 3-month period. I'm not sure.
Not all of them. Not all of them. Let's see. For example, the criminal record certificate, unless it's specifically said the certificate is valid for 3 months, general rule is 6. Let's see. Usually consulates provided this document for 3, this document for 6. Then, depending on the administration, where you're going to apply, for example, for digital nomad, marriage certificate is valid for 3, but for the one of the consulates, they say it's more time. I mean, as I said, everything is different, depending on what type of visa you're going to apply.
It happens the same with purchases. One of the mistakes that I was going to speak about is, people used to think that you can buy whatever property and you can have any use on that property. So, for example, the other day, a client asked us, well, in this property that I'm going to buy, I want to start a business. Well, we have to see that carefully, because that specific town hall didn't allow properties to have any business, to start any business, unless the property had a certain amount of documents. So, for example, if you're buying a rustic property and you want to start a business on it, you have to be careful, because the town hall might not grant the opening license. Or, for example, if you want to buy a property to rent it out on holidays, you have to be careful, because the community of owners might have the rule of holiday rentals not being allowed. So it is quite important when you're going to buy a property, what do you want that property for? Do you want the property to live on it? Okay, that's easier. But do you want the property to rent it out on holidays? Then we have to be extra cautious. Do you want the property to have a business? Then we have to be extra cautious. Or do you already know that you want to make some works on the property? Then we have to be careful, because maybe if the property doesn't have a first occupation license, the town hall will not grant any license for any work, so you will not be able to make any renovation. So what I'm trying to say with this is, in Spain, it always happens the same, which is, depending on the authority that you're dealing with, rules will change. It happens to us in the property law department with the town hall in Fuengirola or the town hall in Galicia or the town hall in Barcelona. They will have different criteria depending on which town hall you are dealing with.
Okay. Yeah. Sorry, Ian, I don't know if you've been a client of ours, but as I've said before, Anna's got 100% success rate. Yeah, I can't, I'm sorry you gave up, but, we have Anna and Ivan are both full-time immigration lawyers, and, you can have a look at the reviews on Google and Trustpilot. We can do the visas. So Violet, my sister has a house in Malaga. I wanted a pool. She just got scammed by an English builder. Well, yeah, that's quite common. I mean, so obviously it's a cost to make sure that the builder's registered. You enter into a proper contract. Maybe there's an architect overseeing the contract. Payments at various stages.
One thing that I see very often is the builder will not even provide the license from the town hall to make the works required. Some months ago, a client came to us saying exactly the same that Violet says. I paid a builder whatever amount to make, I can't remember if it was an extra room or something on the property, and he never did the job, and he's not answering the phone, and he's not answering my calls. And when I asked her, do you have a contract? She said no. But when I asked her, well, do you at least have the license from the town hall to make the works? Because if you have it, then we can use it with another builder and then start a judicial process against this builder. And the builder didn't even provide the license from the town hall. Well, the builder probably never even obtained the license from the town hall. So when dealing with builders in Spain, I'm afraid to say, of course, not everyone is the same, but you have to be very, very careful. If they don't provide a contract, if they don't have an insurance, you have to see the reviews, the website. You have to ask them when do they expect you to provide the license from the town hall, because otherwise, well, it is quite common to see scams.
Yeah, I mean, this is it. There's a lot of things you should do. For English people, maybe Americans, to get work done in your house, there's different types of licenses. So you tell the town hall the value of the project, you pay them a small percentage, you get the license. There's different types of licenses. Now that's step one. Step two, you ask the builder for their autonomo registration, the limited company documents. You ask them, have you got public liability insurance? Because you don't want anything like that to happen. Have you got insurance for your work? So if your work's not good, it can be covered. And a contract. And if it's big work, if it's a big project, you might need an architect. So there's lots of things. If somebody's being scammed by a builder, it's just like the United Kingdom. You could initiate a court case against them to recover the money. But there's no point initiating a court case, spending money on Belen and what have you, if the person, you can't find them or they haven't got any money. That's basically it. The other thing that we just skimmed over a little bit is, if you want to buy a house in Spain, but you want to, say, go away for the summer or go away for the winter or whatever, and you're thinking of like an Airbnb or a Booking.com type rental, then you have to be very, very careful. So Ian, we're based Marbella, Fuengirola and Malaga, but Belen and Anna are in the Fuengirola office, but we can do everything online. So what I'm saying is, if you just want the house for like Airbnb or something like that, then you need a license. Now, I think it's been clarified, hasn't it, Belen, in the law, that the license, if the house has a license, it passes with the house.
Yes, but you have to be cautious with that. So we have a resolution from the Board of Notaries in which this board has said that if the property has a license, the license goes with the house. That's true. But you have to check the law that was applied by the time the license was granted, which means in Spain, when you get a tourist license, that is done through a declaration under your own responsibility, which means that I can say, I have this property has a first occupation license, I fulfill all the requirements, and that's it. You obtain the tourist license. So what happens if the seller obtained the tourist license and said in this box, he clicked the box saying that he fulfilled all the requirements, but the property didn't fulfill. So you have to check the law that was applied by the time that the license was granted, and you have to check that by that time, the property fulfilled all the conditions, which means the community of owners didn't have any restriction, the property had a first occupation license. If that's the case, and the tourist license has been obtained legally, then yes, the license goes with the property. But it is important to know that in Spain, unfortunately, we still see people obtaining tourist license illegally. So, for example, the other day, we had a client buying 4 properties, and the agent told me, all of the properties, the 4 properties, have a tourist license. And I said, how? If you have 2 of them are business premises, you can have a tourist license on that. And he said, well, the properties have it. Yeah, well, but if you receive an inspection, you will get fined. And he said, oh, okay, well, we will then cancel the licenses before completion. Okay, but you have said in the advertisement that the 4 properties have a tourist license. 2 of them are not valid because you cannot have a tourist license in a business premises. So again, yes, as you said, if the property had a valid tourist license, then yes, the license goes with the property. But you still have to check that the license was correctly obtained.
Yeah. So the license has to be a valid. If the property has a valid license, then it can pass with the property. Now, again, we deal with everywhere in Spain, you know, the islands, everywhere. So it's impossible to go through every single place. But say, for example, in Fuengirola, are they still granting tourist licenses in Fuengirola?
No, they're not. Fuengirola and Malaga were the 2 town halls here in Malaga that decided to stop granting tourist licenses. But for example, Ian says he's in Mijas. Mijas is still granting licenses because they, in the whole of Mijas is a quite big place. Well, in the whole of Mijas, they only have 8 hotels. So either they issue tourist licenses or tourists will not have any place to stay. So the Mijas town hall is still accepting tourist license freely, of course, unless the community of owners has any restriction against it.
Yeah, we'll come on to that. So say, for example, you've got Mijas and you've got Fuengirola, and they're right next to each other. Fuengirola isn't granting new ones, but Mijas is. So really, the key thing is, if you want to buy a property in Spain and you're thinking about the tourist license, short term, which is only for short term for Airbnb, tell your lawyer, it could be Belen, could be another lawyer, tell your lawyer that that's what you're interested in. What you've got to be careful. If you're renting it long term, then you don't need a tourist license. Now, the other thing in Spain is lots and lots of community of owners in Spain, which means it's like condos in America. We don't really have them in England. So the other thing, Belen, do you just want to tell people about buying on a development, a community of owners, how the law works for tourist licenses with that?
So what the law says, the law was changed a few years ago, and the law now states that the community of owners can restrict or limit, which means forbid, holiday rentals. So let's say I buy a property today and the property doesn't have a tourist license, but the property has a first occupation license, which is the document that will allow me to have a tourist license. You call the community, you call the administrator, and you say, do you have any rules against holiday rentals? If they say no, you can obtain it freely, unless you are in the Fuengirola or Malaga town hall. But if not, you can obtain it freely. What happens is some communities have never had holiday rentals, so they don't have any rules. If you are the first or the second or the third to obtain a tourist license, normally, if the community doesn't have any license, well, you are able to obtain it. We have also seen cases of communities saying, okay, tourist licenses are approved, but we cannot have, if we have 10 properties, only 20% of the properties can have a tourist license, not more than that. So if by the time you buy, there are already two neighbors with a tourist license, you wouldn't be able to obtain one. This is why, again, it is so important. What do you want the property for? Do you want it to rent it out on holidays? Then, well, since the beginning, we have to start the checking, because it is not just the fact that the seller is the owner, that the property doesn't have charges, that the property has a first occupation license, but also what is the community's position about holiday rentals? Is the community okay with that? The community doesn't have any rule? Okay, perfect, green light, we go ahead. Then, of course, most of the cases are gray zones in which communities didn't forbid them, but they said that maybe in the future they might restrict them. The other day, an administrator told me, even we don't have it forbidden because the neighbors didn't approve it, but if your client obtains it, I will file a judicial process against him. And I was like, well, I can file a process against you, against John, and have no material against John. I can start a process against everyone. So we are seeing also administrators saying, I'm going to start a process against you if you obtain it. Well, do it. You don't have any reason to do it. If the community doesn't have a minute from a meeting saying that that holiday rentals are forbidden, you can do it. You can obtain the tourist license. Yeah.
Right. So Steve asked the question, my community won't allow holiday rentals. Is there a way to get a holiday rental license?
Well, we will need to see the minute, because it is true that some minutes from communities of owners are very gray in the way they are drafted. So we would need to see exactly what the minute said. And sometimes I have seen documents drafted such in a bad way that we have obtained tourist licenses anyway, because the restriction was not approved as such. But like a way of saying, we don't want holiday rentals, but if you don't specifically state, I want to forbid this, then maybe it is a matter of getting the tourist license and see what the land registry says.
Yeah. Okay. The other point I just wanted to make is I'm talking about short term, like a couple of days, a couple of weeks, Airbnb. Now, if you rent into, say, a teacher from September to May, you don't need a tourist license. And if you rent in long term, so ad infinitum, you don't need a tourist license. So I just wanted to make.
In Spain, we have three kinds of rental contracts. We have the tourist license, the holiday rentals for a few days, for a few weeks, for a month. Then we have short-term rentals. It is important that the short-term is justified. So for a student that is coming for 9 months, for a person that is coming for a sick leave of a colleague for 3 months or whatever, to justify why the contract is a short term. If it is a short term, you do not need to register in the land registry, you do not need the tourist license, you don't need the first occupation license, you just need a contract. That has to be well done, because in that contract you have to justify the purpose. So if it is a student, 9 months, whatever. And then we have the long term, which is for 5 years. And for that, you don't need a first occupation license or anything either.
Yeah. Okay. So if I just bring you back in, Anna, if people are applying for a visa, I mean, there's all different visas. The non-lucrative. Anna's our visa immigration specialist, if you've just started watching. So if people are applying for a visa, the non-lucrative visa, the digital nomad visa, the self-employed visa, how does it work with where they live? Do they have to buy somewhere or rent somewhere, or how does it work?
It depends. For example, saying about non-lucrative, if you're from United States, the majority of United States consulates, Spanish consulate in the United States, will ask you to have a proof that you have place where to move in Spain. In that case, they only ask you for 3 months, so it could be your property, it could be Airbnb, it could be a rental agreement, wherever you want. The consulates in UK, they do not care if you have place. You don't need to prove it, so you can say even an company.
So that's the thing. If you just tuned into live stream, Anna, the immigration lawyer, talked about that before. I know it just says Belen down there, but Anna sat next to her. Some consulates have a different interpretation of the law. So the Spanish consulate in place A will interpret the law differently to the Spanish consulate in place B. So it's very hard to give an answer. But Anna deals with all these different consulates all day long, and Ivan, he's another lawyer we have, and they know how each consulate works. So she made the point that in America, yeah, you'd have to have 3 months, the American concept, but in the UK, they don't really mind. So you don't have to own a place or rent a place or,
Well, I
use.
can recommend you that if you have the address, for example, you already have a property. It will, as I said before, it will be easier for you. The second part of the process, generally, which is registration of the household, the payment address, and fingerprinting. You don't need to looking for the long term. And for example, if you're in summertime in Malaga, it will be extremely expensive and complicated. Let's see, the saturated zones we have. So if you have property already, it will be only on your favor. It doesn't mean that having the property will 100% guarantee you the visa. First, you have bonus,
Yeah.
the consulate will see and say, oh, nice, he has the investment here already, it's good. And of course, the second part will be much easier for you. That's also the plus. For
Yeah.
a digital nomad, for example, if you're applying from Spain, you do not need to prove the permanent address here. That's why you can rent a holiday, for example, Airbnb, for 2-3 months until the process is completed, and then you can find something more permanent, buy it, or you can find something for 6 months or more. This really depends on you.
Absolutely. Right. Has anybody got any more questions? I mean, we can talk for hours about lots and lots of different subjects, but obviously we are lawyers, so we would say take independent legal advice before you buy something or you apply for a visa. The other thing, a trap that people fall into, they think that they're not, when they've got a visa, they think, oh, I'm not going to pay any tax in Spain, so I'm not going to become a tax resident. But if you don't become a tax resident, then you won't be able to renew your visa. And the Spanish tax law runs from tax year runs from January to December, and it's 183 days or more to be a tax resident. So, but you have to be a tax resident to be able to renew your visa. The other thing I just wanted to talk about while people are on here is the capital gains tax trap. Now, for example, in the UK, if I make a profit on my primary residence, I don't pay tax on that. But the problem that you could have possibly is, say, for example, I'll make an easy example. You sell your property in the UK on the 1st of January. Then you move to Spain on the 2nd of January. Now, if you stay in Spain, as of the 31st of December, of course, you've done more than 183 days. You are then a Spanish tax resident. That would mean that you can be taxed, subject to a few things, on the profit of the property you made in a different country. So it's very, very important you speak to Belen about avoiding capital gains tax. There is exemptions if you make some reinvestment. There is exemptions if you're over 65. But be very, very careful, because it also goes on where your family is, where your investments are. Yeah, because whims. If we sell our property in the UK, do we have to wait to buy a Spanish property to buy? Yeah, that's what I was talking about, basically. Depending on how old you are. Say, I mean, I'm 56. So if I sold my property in the UK, I would make sure that I didn't spend 183 days or more in Spain in that calendar year. So, yeah, I mean, and all you do is you can still come to Spain. You just make sure you leave Spain. You can go to Andorra, Morocco, anywhere else. Just make sure that you leave Spain. Otherwise, you will be a tax resident and you will have to pay tax on the profit you've made in another country. Not if you're over 65, but tax residency can also be where your family are, where your investments are. Again, we have Pablo. He's not here tonight, but we have Pablo. He's our tax lawyer. You can speak to him about that. Or Belen, but it's worth asking that question. Very, very important. It's not the end of the world. Say, for example, I sold my property yesterday in England, and today I moved to Spain. And then in a couple of weeks, I speak to Belen, and Belen says, well, are you going to? And I'm, yeah. Oh, well, look, all you've got to do is make sure you don't do 183 days or more this year. So it's not the end of the world. We've had a lot of clients who've suddenly had to leave Spain for a few days and then come back. But there you go. Yeah. So that's the capital gains tax trap. You don't want to fall into that. The other thing, Belen, is again, it's a very generic question because it depends on where you buy in Spain. But how much extra should people budget for on top of the purchase price?
So, for example, if you're buying here in Andalusia, let's say a 10. If you're buying in Costa Blanca, maybe a 13. Well, Costa Blanca is going to have a lower rate for transmission tax shortly. So it is going from a 10 to a 9. So in Costa Blanca, it's going to be a 12. Catalonia, well, a 9, 10, 12, depending on the property price. So normally what I do is you put the rate of transmission tax and you add another 3-4% more or less.
So yeah, as Belen said, it's 7% in Andalusia. Costa Blanca could be 10%. I think the Canary Islands are 6%. And then you add a bit more because you've got, if you want a lawyer, it's up to you, notary fees, land registry fees, things like that.
The taxes.
The other thing, did hack 30? Do you need a Spanish will if you have a property in Spain? Absolutely no legal requirement, but I couldn't stress more why you should have one. If you listen to episode 5 of the Move to Spain podcast, we talked to the big boss of the law firm, Marisa, and she talks about Spanish wills. Basically, if you have a Spanish will and you die, well, that's what a will's for. It's much quicker and it's much cheaper if you have a Spanish will. A lot of people think, I'll just go to the notary and get a will. Yeah, but you need the tax advice and the legal advice on your jurisdiction to decide what jurisdiction you want the will to come under. It's not just a case of rubber stamping it Spain. You might think, well, I prefer the legal system of England and the tax implications, so I'm going to have the jurisdiction of that country. But yeah, it's much, much better to have a will, but not a legal requirement. Also, if I was living in Spain but came to you 140 days per year, would I need a will? A will isn't anything to do with how many days you spend in Spain. It's just if you've got assets in Spain. So you could have a holiday home in Spain. Is that right, Belen? Even if you've got a holiday home, you should have a will.
If you live in Spain and you have any asset here, and that's what I was about to say before, if you have any asset in Spain, it is important for you to have a will, because if you're Spanish, well, it is easier. But if you are a foreigner, the thing is that your heirs will have to obtain all of the documents from your country, apostille them, translate them, because let's say you die with 2 sons. In that case, your 2 sons will need to bring the documents from the UK showing that they are the only 2 sons, that you didn't have any husband or any wife, that you didn't have any parents. So you have to bring all of the documents from your country, and you have to apostille them, and you have to translate them. So it is quite a long and also an expensive process. Also, because you have to sign 2 different deeds, you just cannot go to the notary and say that you accept the inheritance. You have to sign first a deed in order to declare yourself as heir. So it's quite a long process, something that you can easily avoid if you make a Spanish will. And if you have any asset in Spain, yes, definitely, you should make a Spanish will.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, I'm not saying you don't legally have to have one. You don't legally have to come to a lawyer. But it's recommended to have one and to come to a lawyer, because you need to make sure that you're getting the right tax advice, the right legal jurisdiction advice. Again, listen to episode 5 of the podcast. Marisa, the boss, has been a lawyer for more than 30 years, and she talks about it in episode 5. And we'll get her back on the podcast again. We have a Move to Spain podcast, sorry if you're just tuning in, that we talk about all different subjects. I think we've got 90-something episodes. Anna's been on, Belen's been on. Belen's been on a few times. Episode 9, she talks about the buy-in process. But so the will, not legally, but you'd be crazy not to have one, because it makes life much quicker and cheaper for your heirs. If it's only you, then don't bother, It's only you.
In the will, you can apply your own law. So, for example, all of our clients from the UK, of course, they apply their own law. According to the Spanish law, you have the obligation of leaving a certain amount of assets to your sons or daughters. In the UK, you don't have this. So it is important to have a will, because if you have a will, you can leave your assets to whoever you want to.
Yeah, I mean that's it. That's one of the reasons why you need not just to go to the notary and have the will stamped. That's one reason why you need face-to-face advice, because in Spain you can't disinherit your children. So if you go under the Spanish law, you can't disinherit your children. England, UK, do what you want. It's your money. So you've got to be, and then there's different tax things, so it's not a legal requirement, but it's recommended to do that. So I think we've done about an hour. So has anybody got any more questions? Or because obviously, we all studied for 6 years, so we could rant on for ages on this. But we do have the Move to Spain Facebook group. We do have the YouTube channel. We do have the Move to Spain podcast. We've been here since 1992. TikTok's a bit new for us. I haven't even managed the background this time. But yeah, Belen's head of immigration. Belen's head of property, sorry. Anna's head of immigration. We've got lots of other lawyers. We've got tax lawyers, accountants, everything you need. You have to go to court. We've got litigation lawyers as well. If anyone's got any more questions, otherwise we'll just sort of wind it up because I'm sure everybody wants their dinner. Right. Okay. Well, thanks for coming on, Belen. And we were meant to be on the other platform, YouTube, but it didn't work, so we're on here. Apologies to everybody.
So, John, next time we will do it here directly. Let's not use YouTube. It's quite obvious that we.
Yeah, we know TikTok. We're 100% TikTok.
Yeah, exactly.
It's too addictive if you're already on TikTok if you're watching this, but yeah, try to stay up to, it's very addictive. But yeah, any questions, contact at justlawsolicitors.com. And please, it sounds crazy, but take advice. If you're going to take advice before you sign or pay anything, or take advice before you apply for the visa, because we can do certain things, but after you've signed a contract, but it's much better to speak to us before you've signed any contracts.
And each visa is different. Each visa, and even if you have the same requirements with your friend, which already have the visa in Spain, unfortunately, it could be absolutely different. Each situation, each case is absolutely different. So take the advice.
Again, as Anna's pointed out before, different consulates interpret the rules differently, which I know is crazy, but what can we say? We are just the lawyers,
It's crazy, that's true. But, well, we are here to try to reduce as much as possible this interpretation of the authorities.
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying. I mean, I'm an open book. I'm trying to buy a property, and if it goes through, I'll get Belen on and we'll talk about it because you wouldn't believe it.
Well, we should have an episode of that. What you should avoid or not do when buying a property in Spain. We will do one thing about that.
We could do my absolute example. I'm an open book.
Yeah.
When we get to the end of it.
Not sharing personal details.
Oh, when we get to the end of it, if I buy it, when we get to the end of it, if it all falls through, we'll talk to you on TikTok all about it because I think it's going to be fun. Yeah. Okay. Well, thanks for coming on, Belen, Anna, and I have no idea why the video isn't. Just a question at the end. Can the current immigration season be ended for some reason? Well, immigration law changes all the time, but what we talked about today is current. Just to end, Anna, there's nothing on the horizon for immigration. It's going to change massively, is there?
Massively not. We are expecting for the extraordinary regularization, which is probably
that's basically when. Yeah.
But it's speaking with the year at the moment, and massive, no. As I said,
the last big thing for most people that were interested in anything like this was the golden visa ending, which is one way if you bought a property over a certain value, you got residency. But that's ended. There's nothing on the horizon. There's a lot of there's a law that may come into force where illegals who were illegal as of December last year could get residency, get citizenship or whatever. But that isn't law yet. So there isn't really any big thing. Property, I think the big thing in property is Costa Blanca might reduce the purchase tax. Is that right, Belen? That's the only thing that we've got coming up on property, isn't it?
Yeah, and Murcia is going to probably, yeah. Yeah,
Murcia is going to reduce it, I think, by 1%. again. So yeah, but then again, property prices are going up so much. It's probably not worth waiting for that 1%. I wouldn't, because even if probably. I mean, even I think Gareth. Hi, Gareth. I don't think Gareth Hope. He told me that Torremolinos went up 23% last year. It's crazy. I mean, and I talked to Greg a lot on the podcast as well. But basically, if you're absolutely sure you want to buy a property in Spain and it's for you, and you know what it's like in the winter and the summer, and you're used to normal life, and all that, then do it. But we always say rent first, winter, summer, a year if you can. Live the life and make sure it's for you. But yeah, we're here, justlawsolicitors.com. Contact at justlawsolicitors.com. Normal office hours, no siestas. We don't close in August. Right. Okay, I'll let you go and have your tea then, or your dinner. I'm a Northern. Have your dinner, Anna and Belen.
Okay, John. So good to see you, and see you
Yeah.
soon.
All right. Thanks a lot. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.